all and welcome. You're watching Closing Trades on ET now. I'm Anisha Jain, and for the day the market is holding on to 19,300. So from the high of the day we have definitely let go, but nonetheless at least the green tinge has been maintained, not to the level of strength that we are seeing in the rest of the Asian markets and the European markets too, showing that they'll start on the positive side, but nonetheless at least there is some sort of green which is visible. The good news is the Bank Nifty is actually doing quite well today. That index is up almost 0.7%. Most of that rally has been led by the PSU banking names, because if you pull up the PSU banking index, that's one space which is doing rather well. So whether it's a PNB or the other PSU names, they're all quite excited. Even private banking names, HDFC Bank, Axis Bank, Kotak Bank, Federal Bank, they're all holding up comfortably in the green. The other space that was doing all right earlier in the day was also the real estate pack, and maybe we should pull up that and see. India Bulls Real Estate, for instance, even DLF for that matter, all of those counters were holding steady, and right now as well, that's the case. But the big boy Reliance, that's the one that we are tracking right now. Of course, the annual general meeting is underway, and we have seen, as usual, big announcements coming in. They're talking about how they're looking at leveraging and increasing their 5G presence and the enterprise business. But they're also talking about how the air fiber is going to be launched on September 19th. So that's the big announcement that we have so far. Not much has been spoken yet regarding any value unlocking or retail or financial services as yet, Aisha. But nonetheless, the stock has also given up from the highs of the day because maybe, as usual, the street was expecting a lot of announcements. But for now, it's been quite somber in terms of the AGM takeaways.
Yeah, it's been somber. The reaction in the stock as well is somber. But, a couple of things which the market in any case was working with as an assumption that the next set of leaders are sort of now taking center stage, which has been pretty apparent, to be fair, in the last AGMs. The fact that now Nita Ambani has actually resigned from the board, there has been the appointment of Isha Ambani as well as Anant Ambani as the non-executive directors. That's now made official, but let's see. You've still got a whole lot of the AGM to go. So let's see whether a formal announcement on whether or not we're going to see any hiving off the businesses, listing separately, what he has to say about Jio Financial Services, if at all. We're still right now on the Jio takeaways as well. But let's talk about the markets. Not much happening, although we've made a comeback and we're back at that 19,300 print. Anisha highlighted a couple of the buzzers, India Bulls Housing being one such case in point. Piramal Enterprises, remember, they also had the investor day today, 4.5% higher on that stock. BHCL, GNFC, Manappuram, these are a few green dots within the broader end of the market. Within the Nifty, it's L&T, Maruti, M&M, Sun Pharma and HDFC Bank, which has actually made a 1% move. These are a couple of stocks which are holding out. So let me quickly take it across to Naresh, find out what he's making of the trading texture. Naresh, not quite as gung-ho as the global handover this morning, but we've made it back to 19,300. What next on the cards?
So again, the same trend continues in a bounce back. The Nifty continues to lag. The broader indices, if you notice, are up almost 0.8 to 0.1%, 0.8 to 1%. So that's the case. We are not seeing a recovery, stronger recovery in the heavyweight. So you still have Reliance and Infosys in the negative for the day. At the same time, just a little bit of a contribution from HDFC Bank, almost 30 points coming in from HDFC Bank. So for now, the same structure continues. The broader market sees better action. The index is holding on to the 19,250, 300 mark. And when we look at the other indices, we've not even broken similar levels. The structure is much more flatter. So the view remains we are still stuck in a band. And till the time we don't cross 19,600, this could continue in a sideways fashion.
The sideways move will continue. But Naresh, what about Reliance Industries? Because that stock is, of course, in the spotlight on account of AGM. But technically speaking, what is the chart reading?
So that's a stock which is on radar for a structural, whether it can make a structural change. 2850 was the all-time high before, deducting 200 rupees, 220 rupees of Jio. A similar level comes to 2600, 2650. Till the time it does not cross those levels, we are stuck in a band, 2400 on the downside, 2600, 2650 on the upside. So the stock is pretty sideways as of now. You can get a breakout only about 2600, 2650. Till then, it's almost a sideways stock.
Welcome on board Kunal as well. Kunal, quite a few buzzers out there from within the liquid universe. Manappuram, India Bulls Housing seeing a big tear, almost a 10% move, and then Piramal Enterprises as well. Anything specific out of these three that you spot?
So I think all three of them are attractive. Piramal Enterprise and Indiabulls Housing specifically, both these stocks, in fact, Indiabulls Housing and the group stocks are doing exceptionally well for themselves. I think it's more like a dream run for these stocks over the last couple of weeks. Indiabulls Real Estate today, I think, has broken past about that 70 hurdle. Indiabulls Housing is inching or coming close to that 200 levels. The stock was at one point at an upper circuit of 10% plus. It's moved up higher from those levels. So I think it's an excellent momentum which is shaping up for the Indiabulls Housing, and many of these stocks have actually given breakouts more on the weekly and the monthly charts this time around. So which means that the move should be sustainable for these names. I would believe that there could be a higher up move into these stocks with a degree of at least 15 to 20% possibility in just the next maybe couple of weeks. So traders could look at this as a high risk bet from the space. Piramal Enterprise is something which is very interesting. It's a very, very stable stock relatively, and the stock has moved from sub 700 levels to now 1100 plus mark where it's trading right now. Again, an excellent chart. My targets on the very short term basis, which I recommended even in the morning for Piramal Enterprise, is closer to 1200.
Okay, so that's a take coming in on Piramal Enterprises as well as Indiabulls. In fact, we'll shortly get Ankur to talk to us about that Indiabulls house story as well. But before that, let me just complete the point on Reliance with Pashupati Advani as well. He's joining us on the show. Pashupati, let's begin by Reliance itself. I'm not sure if Street was expecting a lot of value unlocking at Sector in this AGM, but so far there hasn't been any big bank announcement. The only one that caught attention is the fact that Jio Air Fiber will be launched on September 19th, and how they're looking at tracking the entire country with 5G by December of this year. So, Pashupati, you'll have to unmute yourself.
So all these things that they've announced are spending a lot of money upfront and getting the result after 2-3 years. So I think that we need to be mindful of that. And if the shareholder wants to see the bang right now, it's not really going to happen. It's going to be, we've brought in a new technology. We're going to open it to the public. Let's see how the public picks it up. If it picks it up, we'll have huge bottom line. And we've seen it already. They've demonstrated that, by, giving the smartphone, giving the other devices, giving other sort of incremental benefits to people, they have been able to increase and get good result. But they're continuing to spend. I think I saw the number, something like $150 billion they've spent. So they're continuing to spend to grow. And as long as they do that, you're not going to see that in the bottom line. So I think that's what we need to be mindful of.
Okay, since we're talking about Indiabulls, in fact, what we are picking up is that it actually may be rebranded by next month. ET now has learned from sources that it's already applied to the RBI for a certification change. My colleague Ankur Mishra joins in with exclusive details on what his sources are telling him on Indiabulls.
Yes, ever since the company has changed from a promoter-led company to now diversified shareholders-led company, there are many changes which has happened in the company, and now it will be into a new avatar soon, not only in terms of name but also in terms of certificate of registration. We have been given to understand that the company has applied for a new name to Reserve Bank of India, and that is Sanman Financials. Now it is up to Reserve Bank of India to give the approval on the name front as well as certificate of registration front. The company is currently registered as a housing finance company and it wants to change itself to NBFC. This route has been chosen because the company feels, as far as its asset light strategy, its business strategy, NBFC is more suited for the company. Hence, that kind of application has been made to Reserve Bank of India, and we understand that Reserve Bank of India is going to consider the certificate of registration change request very soon. So you may see by next month both these changes happen in the company, and not only the name but in terms of strategy is also going to change for company. We have also tried to understand whether or not the company is going to bifurcate it into two different verticals, meaning the retail vertical or wholesale vertical. But for now, we have been given to understand that the company will be there as an NBFC only. On later stages, you may see that the company may see different verticals as well. We also reached out the company for comment, and we have got to know that the company has made application to Reserve Bank of India for name change and certificate of registration change, and there has also been one specific comment saying that there will be no changes in the products we offer.
Okay, reason why there's quite a bit of excitement on India bulls. But we'll take a very quick break, come right back. We'll continue getting snippets from the RIL AGM and, of course, chat with our experts.
In association with Ujjivan.
That 19,300 print on the index, it's the broader market once again, which is much more lively. Having said that, we are testing that 19,300 level, so a bit of a dip down from the peak of the day. Indiabulls housing now is scaling up almost 11% as we speak right now, so a big move on that stock. Manappuram higher by nearly about 5%. Piramal Enterprise is up 4%. India Cement at the day's highs, a 4% bump up coming in there. And then GNFC as well, which is scaling higher by about 4% as we speak. Whereas Reliance, as the AGM continues, that stock will just come up for you on your screens. Haven't seen much of an excitement coming in on that stock. Reliance Industries is the stock that I'm talking about. That intraday graph will just be up on your screens. In fact, after being quiet for the better part of today's trading session, you're seeing a sharp dip down, and I think that is impacting the move on the index as well, and reflective of that 1% lower on Reliance as we speak. It's now sub the 2,500 mark as well in trade. Kunal, would the heavy lifting have to be done by Reliance, or you think banks can pull it up? Because even banks are not doing a whole lot.
No, I think the heavy lifting has to be done by the banks, and maybe some part of that could be taken by the auto stocks, because that's the two sectors which have been performing very well in this last 5-6 months of uptrend. And these are the two spaces where there are formidable names which could impact as well as boost the market sentiment. Reliance, on the other hand, I strongly believe is now become more of a special situation stock, or a stock which is more driven by events, because you tend to see the stock going into any kind of a trend whenever there's some sort of a news flow or event buzzing around the stock price, like what we had for example in the month of July. In the first 15 to or 20 odd days, the stock had seen rise of almost 10% on the back of the Geo Financial Services news flow. And post that, we've actually seen the stock getting into a consolidation. So I don't have too much of a high expectations on the short-term charts for the stock, unless there is some sort of news flow attached. I think banking stocks is something which looks fairly attractive.
Naresh, it's the mid-cap IT end of the market which is actually caving in today, much unlike the trend that you saw last week. So Emphasis, Coforge, Persistent, all these stocks down. Opportunity to buy, you think, or avoid?
So one can be selective here. So Persistent looks more promising, because that has been knocking at that 50, 100, 50, 200 mark for the last almost 6 months now, and as well as the previous time in 2022 as well. So Persistent could be a buy around 4,900 to 5,000 levels, coming close to that mark today. And whenever it crosses 5,300, it would be a fresh move. The other names, we've just seen a small decline, so would wait it out a lot more. But structurally, Persistent has been the best looking chart out of all the names.
Persistent looking the smartest of them all. L&T, of course, has been a strong one. It's now sitting at the session highs, a solid 2% move. And Naresh, we were talking about this earlier in the morning as well, right? BEL, BEML, all these cap good names getting fresh orders. A good move from BHEL last week, and today as well, you're seeing a continuation of that trend. And then, of course, L&T being the mightiest of the lot.
So the whole sector looks promising, and the fact is it's been a slow and steady run. So it's not been a one-way rally in the capital goods space like what happened in railways or shipyard. It's been a slow and steady move. So if you look at L&T, the stock earlier had a 52-week all-time high around 2,400 levels. That got crossed in June, and today we are in August, and it has moved up to 2,700 levels. So it's taken its time to make that 15% move. So that's a nice steady structure which looks interesting across the whole capital good names. There are new mid caps coming up in the radar. Thermax, which gave a new 52-week high, could be interesting. BHEL is at a 5 to 10 year high. The stock was last at 100 back in 2017 and in 2013. So very promising charts on BHEL as well as L&T and new names like Thermax. So like the whole capital good space, there could just be rotation from Siemens, ABB to the other names now.
Is that stock that we are talking about. Let's take the BTST trades also from our chartist. Kunal, you go first.
Well, Tata Chemical is something which looks attractive. So the stock has not yet given a breakout, but I'm anticipating that this could be today's move indicates that this could be a start of a very strong breakout. And if that happens, it could be almost a 9 or 10 month consolidation breakout for Tata Chemicals. Such a kind of a consolidation I've not seen for a long time for the stock. So would suggest a buy with an anticipated target of 1200 on the upside, stop loss at 975. And Piramal Enterprise is something which I would continue to be bullish on. In the morning, I'd given targets of 1200, would maintain those targets on the stock and stop us at 1040.
Okay, interesting one. In fact, for both of them, there is fundamental news flow as well. Tata Chemicals, the report suggests that soda ash prices have finally increased after the slew of cuts that we had seen. So that too should be supporting the price for Tata Chemicals. And for Piramal Enterprises, of course, there's an analyst meet today. Street is hoping a lot in terms of the takeaway. So maybe ahead of that, we're seeing a bit of a bounce back. But later in the day, it's at 4 p.m. I think. So we'll get to know the details only later. Naresh, what about you? Do you have BTST ideas or STBT?
So both BTST ideas. First is a buy on Manappuram Finance, a reversal candle today. Also multi-months breakout on cards. It did see a breakout and saw a little bit of a dip on a block deal. Looks promising here. Stop loss at 143, target price of 150. Second is a buy on IRCTC. The stock is trying to break out above the 680 mark. Stop loss at 670, target price of 695.
Just looking at some other buzzers as well, Railtel Corp has suddenly seen a bit of a spike. So, of course, it's been doing quite well for itself from the start of the trading session. It's up almost 15%. But in the last half an hour or so, there's another inch up happening for Railtel. Stock sitting with a gain of almost 15-16% now. Indiabulls Housing is something that we have flagged off already. The entire turnaround after the management change is something that the street is banking on. You also have Lakshmi Organics, which is doing quite well for itself, 8% higher. SJVN from the power pack is doing quite okay with a gain of almost 7%. Sirma, SGS, Aeon Exchange, Rights, as well as Kalyan Jewelers. These are some of the other names that stand out. On the losing side, so Jio Financial Services, that's of course taken a huge knock. I'm not sure why. I mean, I'm not sure if Street was expecting something more, but at least the management there in the AGM sounded fairly positive in the terms of how they're looking at expanding their presence, how they're looking at getting into the insurance business. In fact, we should pull up the other insurance names as well. The likes of Star Insurance, ICICI Lombard, your LIC for that matter, even SBI Life, HDFC Life. Are they seeing cut because there'll be increased competition or something that has been factored by the street already? Because Mr. Mukesh Ambani did talk about that they're looking at getting into the insurance space, maybe partnering with some of the global players as well. So the insurance names should be on the back foot on account of that, with the increased competition from a behemoth like Reliance coming in with respect to Jio Financial Services. But before I talk about the insurance stocks with our chartists, let me hear out the views coming in from Mahesh Nandurkar of Jefferies, because he's talking about the spaces he likes, the banking names, the staples, etc. Listen in.
Staples is more of a tactical overweight for us, something that we would view to overweight, from the, let's say, the next 6 to 9 months perspective. The reason for that is twofold. One is that we believe in the rural recovery story. We believe that the rural markets have been weak for pretty much the last 2 to 3 years due to the pandemic impact, etc. But we are seeing slow signs of recovery over there. I think staples is one of the ways to play that. Secondly, we also expect that running up to the elections, we have seen some announcements coming from certain states, and I generally believe that running up to the elections, there could be some good news coming for the bottom of the pyramid as well. So I want to play that angle as well. And finally, staples is also a sector where we are clearly seeing the benefit of lower raw material prices reflecting in better EBITDA margins. So those are primarily the three reasons. But having said that, I would say that this is still a tactical bet. This is not a sector that I would buy and hold with a 5-year view. The valuation standpoint, it is the only sector where the current valuations are in line with historical averages. For most of the other sectors, the current valuations are much higher. So even from the valuation standpoint as well, the private banks and the large banks are looking quite reasonable. I think one of the key issues that we are facing at this point in time, and why the banking sector hasn't really done well, is the over ownership. A lot of people who could have bought have already bought. We're already seeing overweight in the domestic mutual fund insurance sector. We are seeing foreign investors are also overweight on banks. So we definitely need some incremental flows at the broader level for the sector to perform. But having said that, if you look at the stark difference between the large cap banks, I mean, the last 12 months or so, the large cap bank index is up like only 6%. Many of the other segments of the financial stocks like BFSI stock, be it the small finance bank, be it the NBFCs, or be it the small private sector banks, they've all gone up by 60-70%. So there is a huge gap that has got created, and I believe that banks is ultimately going to be one of the ways in which you can possibly play the capex story in an indirect way.
Okay, so that's a view coming in. In fact, since he was talking about banks, let me flag out a few names. PNB, of course, has been doing quite well. In fact, banks and real estate has been doing well since the start of the trading session. But what's joining the party right now is also the pharma names. Pull up a Glenmark Pharma. That's suddenly up around 4%. Pull up a Lupin as well. Let's see what's that up to. It's showing a gain of almost 3%. And Biocon too is up around 2%. Naresh, from this entire pharma space, there's a bit of a breakout happening on some of the names. Is there any name that you would want to recommend as a buy?
So a lot of these names have something like Lupin has been a slow and steady structure, has gone up from 800 to 1100. The stock chart is still very positive. But out of these names, I would be watching out for Biocon because that's the stock which has underperformed for a long time. And this whole cycle over the last few months has been underperformers turning around. And Biocon has spent a good enough time around that, above that breakout point of 250 to 260. For the last 2 months. If it can sustain about 270.75, which was the interim high, this could be a surprise. The stock is available at the same price as it was back in 2018, has corrected from a high of 450.500, still down 50% from the top. So I would be watching out for Biocon. Could even be a buy at current levels with a stop at 250.
Fair enough. I just wanted to tag AB Capital as well because that's also doing quite okay. I think a large trade materialized on that one. I think you like the charts of AB Capital too, right?
Yeah, it's a very attractive chart, and I think on the very recent basis, the stock has actually gone into a correction. So it came very close towards breaking the 200 levels. I think 198, 199 was the high for AB Capital, and the stock has corrected 10% from those levels. But more importantly, it's more of a time-wise grind than a price-wise correction which has happened for AB Capital, and that generally is a very good sign that the stocks are maturing into a second round of uptrend. I believe that with this possible strong block deal for the stock, this could probably place a major bottom in place for the stock. So would be bullish on AB Capital from current levels, and in fact that was also the closing trade which I want to recommend.
Okay, so that's a closing trade coming in by AB Capital. The sideways grind is likely to hold soon. Just tracking what's happening to Reliance once again because the commentary is still ongoing and it seems the stock has taken a bit of a tumble. It's down 1.25%, and you also have Jio Financial Services which is down almost 2%. On the other hand, the stocks which are holding up all right include Power Grid, uptick of almost 3% there. M&M is doing quite well, 2% higher, and L&T as well. Kunal, from the entire power sector, Power Grid, etc., would you still recommend a buy? I mean, the stock has reached 250 levels, and it was just 200, I think, at the start of the year, or maybe 6 to 12 months ago.
If you would ask me maybe 6 months or 1 year back, I would have not touched the space, frankly, Anisha. But what has happened is the moves which you've seen for REC and PFC has actually brought in a different case altogether for these power stocks. Now, PFC, REC were stocks which were remaining range bound for the last 10 or 13 years. And we've seen breakouts where these stocks have given a return of 50% plus in just the last 3-4 months. That has probably put in place for many of the other power stocks to get into that second round of a breakout. Then we look at the other league of stocks, the likes of, for example, the traditional stocks like NTPC, Power Grid, etc. Many of these stocks have given huge breakouts, come out of a 10-year, 5-year downward sloping trend lines and recovered quite smartly for themselves. So that entire space is looking very, very attractive. And that's one of the major reasons why I would be very bullish on the space. I would still believe the likes of NTPC at 217.18 mark where it's trading right now looks good for at least another 30% on the upside on a broader basis, say in the next 6 months to 1 year odd. Even the likes of PFC, REC, the kind of breakouts these stocks have shown in the last 6 odd months, I would probably expect at least another 50% upside into these stocks, possibly in the next 1.5 odd year.
Wow, at least a 50% upside. At least is the word to note there. 50% upside is what Kunal is anticipating in some of these power stocks. So maybe you're not done with the rally. That electrifying rally is here to stay. But Naresh, what about you? Which are the stocks that you like apart from the recommendations that you have made? Anything else that's coming on your radar? Maybe from the real estate pack, because that's also doing quite all right today. Even the PSU banking names?
So I would stick to the mid-cap banking name.
Okay.
Federal Bank looks very interesting. The stock has hit a new 52-week high, new all-time high. Has been the best performing mid-cap banking stock for quite some time now. So a fresh breakout here, 6 to 8 month range of 120 to 140 done. There was an overhang of QIP, which is where the stock got stuck, and now finally a fresh breakout. So Federal Bank could be the interesting one. It should go towards 165 to 180.
Bank, that could be the interesting one, sitting high by around 2%. Nugent Software, on the other hand, is down 7%. Aisha was also talking about a couple of IT names. Coforge, Emphasis. Of course, for Emphasis, there was the analyst meet that they held last week. The commentary wasn't very strong because while BFSI is going to be the mainstay, there are a lot of demand headwinds which are still there. The company is talking about how they're looking at probably navigating through all of that, but nonetheless, there is a bit of weakness which is quite evident. In fact, from the IT space, Kunal, is there any name that you would want to recommend? I mean, Tech Mahindra was a big favorite. HCL Tech had its own time. Is it now that a new stock which is coming up, or these names still continue to be something that you like?
They still continue to be in the favorite list, but many of the mid-cap IT stocks have also started to move up higher. So I think Birlasoft was another mid-cap IT name which I was very bullish on. I think closer to 380. 385 specifically, when there was a huge breakout and more of a consistent breakout for Birlasoft, it's moved up higher. It's still nowhere close to its 2021 highs. I think that by a margin of another maybe 10% odd, the stock could break past about the all-time high levels, 530 approximately. So which means that there should be room of at least another 10% upside on Birlasoft from current levels. Redington is something which I think at 150 odd levels has been beaten down significantly, but again on the charts it's come back towards a major demand zone or a support zone for itself. So this could be a good accumulative a stock to accumulate from a long-term play, and I believe if the turnaround happens for the stock, say in the next 6 months or so, we could be looking at least a 200 breakout for Redington, which should be a decent 30% from current levels.
Okay, Redington, Birlasoft, these are the names. But, the auto ancillary space, that's also doing rather well for itself. Atul Auto, of course, is high by, 15%, I think. It's the ancillaries actually which are doing quite better today. So, Atul Auto, yes, an uptick of almost 15% there. Of course, Mr. Vijay Kedia has increased his stake there. That's a trigger point. But you also have Precision Camshafts, which is doing well for itself. Jamna Auto was having a good run. So, some of these names are definitely quite interesting. In fact, Naresh, your thoughts as far as these auto anchors are concerned?
So Jamna Auto comes first in that list because that's a stock which generally has done well with the auto ancillary space, but the last 1.5 years the stock has been pretty sideways. We saw huge blocks happen at 105 levels back in June, and has been consolidating for July, August between 105 to 115. Today is a breakout. Would expect this to go towards 135 and make a new all-time high. So Jamna Auto looks the promising one out of the names breaking out today.
Jamna Auto. In fact, let's pull up the YTD chart of Jamna Auto and see how the stock has been doing, because there has been a lot of buzz around this. Of course, Electra Green Tech has been doing rather well for itself as well, with the slew of new bus orders, etc. coming. But look at Jamna Auto as well. Not a bad chart at all. Overall, this year has been quite good for the company as well. But let's just wrap up the trading session because it's 1.5 minutes left for trade. It was a good session coming in for the Indian markets. Of course, we started off a bit wobbly. It looked like we'll be just around the 300 range, but we have managed to kind of perk up, ending around just around 19,300 mark. So that weakness that we saw last week at least did not continue to a whole lot, though there was selling pressure at the top yet again. But the advance decline ratio is looking much healthier. There were almost 1,200 stocks advancing to 900 stocks declining. There was quite a bit of strength today in Bank Nifty, which was the outperformer today. So Bank Nifty goes home with a gain of around 0.7%, and large bulk of it actually happening through the PSU names, because it was PNB, Union Bank, Bank of India, Indian Bank. These were the stocks which are holding up. The top sectoral gainer today, of course, was Pharma. So Glenmark, Lupin, Cipla, Biocon, these were the key leaders from the Pharma pack in the pink of health. In terms of the real estate sector as well, we saw quite a bit of momentum. So Indiabulls Real Estate stands out with a 4% gain. You also had Phoenix Limited, Godrej Properties that were doing all right. We just flagged out some of the auto ancillary names, the likes of Jamna Auto, Atul Auto, Precision Camshafts. These are big gainers in the trading session today. You also had some other sectors not doing so well. So IT, for instance, was on the back foot throughout the trading session. Midcap IT specifically in Emphasis, Coforge, etc. On the gaining side, can't not talk about Indiabulls Housing Finance, that exclusive story that we bought for you on ET Now, talking about how overall we have seen a bit of a name change happening for the company. The leadership has changed, and the professional management coming on board is something that the street is banking on Lakshmi Chemicals, higher by 9%. We also have SJVN, Power Grid, Solar Industries, some of these big movers in the trading session today. On the losing side, not many names to flag out, but Poonawalla was seeing some profit booking, a 4% cut. We talked about Emphasis as well, wherein the demand headwinds is something the management highlighted in their analyst meet. So overall, a decent day of trading session coming in, not a runaway rally at all. We're ending just around that 19,300 mark. But at least that's some positive news coming in, and the start of the week has been pretty much all right. But with that, we're wrapping up this edition of Closing Trades. Thanks so much for being with us.
Co-powered by Bank of Maharashtra. एक परिवार एक बैंक.
Market compounding rate